Hello everyone, and welcome to the very first video of Underbrush Studios. My name is Emma, and I'm a recreational artist, so I don't do this professionally. Didn't really go to college for this, but I enjoy doing art just to kind of relax and stress relieve a little bit. I today would like to bring you along with me for the first video to create my logo for my YouTube channel. So I have an idea in my head of what I want this to look like. I haven't really done any sketches or anything, but I figured I'd just kind of wing it and see how that went. So today I'll be using cold pressed watercolor paper and Himi gouache, as well as some pencils and other art supplies if I need them. So first we'll start off, I'll open up my supplies and get all set. I'm wetting the gouache with some water so that way it can kind of get all nice and soft and liquidy for when I go to use it. And kind of gouache and watercolor are some of those interesting things or paint mediums where they're re-wettable. So like with acrylic and with oils, once they dry, you can't go back and use them again. Whereas gouache, which is what this is actually jelly gouache, it's not quite the same thing. Whereas gouache and watercolor are actually re-wettable. So if you set them out and they dry, you can go back and add water to them and re-wet them again. So that's what I've done. I'm gonna let this sit for a little bit, and then while I'm doing that, I'm going to sketch out what I want my logo to look like. So I came up with the idea of Underbrush Studios because I was trying to think of something that connected plants with art, because normally a lot of the art that I do is of nature. So I thought, what's kind of a play on words with art and nature, and I thought underbrush. So today I'm going to try to design my logo in a way that expresses art and nature together. I want to do it in a circle because that is how the Instagram and YouTube username or logo areas, I don't know what that's called, areas are shaped. So I'm gonna go find something circular real quick and I will be right back. Okay, so I went throughout my house to try to find something circular because I cannot draw circles. And I found this lid. I think this will work pretty well for my paper size. It'll give me some nice borders on the outside so the logo doesn't fill the whole thing completely. So I'm going to trace this and then I will get started with the sketching process. All right, I think that's pretty good. Somehow I already got something on my paper. I don't know if it's gouache or fingernail polish. Looks like it might be gouache from my hand. But that'll be okay, I can cover that up later. So now that we've got our circle traced, I think I'm gonna go in and mix the colors for the background. Okay, so I have my paintbrush and I'm going to go and mix. I want to make it kind of a mint color like this for the background, but maybe just a little bit lighter. So now I'm going to mix these. I want it to be more of like a bluish green color, so I'll probably add some of this. And then I know you're not normally supposed to mix with small brushes, but I find that you're supposed to use a paint palette or palette knife. But I don't think I'm gonna do that. Not today. With oil paints, you definitely want to use a palette knife, just because they are so thick and because the oil paint will stick in your bristles. So if you don't mix it with a palette knife, then the colors will get stuck in the bristles while it's mixing, and you'll end up with streakiness in your painting. So you might be going along and painting this nice background color, and all of a sudden you'll get a strong smear of whatever the color had been that you had been mixing to get that color before. And sometimes that can look really cool. You can do it on purpose. Some of Monet's work, which I've replicated a little bit in an art class, he uses a lot of smears and streaks. So in his artwork, that wouldn't be too much of a big deal. But with like what I'm trying to do now, where I want a nice even background color, that would not go so well. I wouldn't want it to be streaky. Like I said, that's with oils. This is with watercolor and gouache. I mean, I'm using gouache, but okay. Still don't think that's quite dark enough. So I'm just gonna keep stirring this in there, working it. I don't want it to be too dark, but I'm gonna try to scan this into the computer with a printer, and I don't know if I don't paint it dark enough if it'll show up very well. So this is looking a little too blue. I'm gonna mix a little bit more green in here just to warm up the colors a little bit, and then I'm probably gonna go in and start painting my background. Okay, so now that I've got my background color mixed, I am going to, I'll use this smaller brush to do the outside, like the border of where the circle is, and then I'll use the larger brush to fill in the middle. So, like I said, I haven't really used gouache all that often, so you're gonna be learning along with me. Ooh, that's so pretty. Okay, so now that the outside border is done, I'm going to swap over to my larger brush and start filling in the inside. Okay, I just had to mix more paint, and I think I mixed the right color. We're gonna have to see once it dries if I did or not, or if I'm gonna have to go over and adjust this a little bit. Honestly, I might end up covering this in a second coat just to make it more of a smooth like finish. Once I'm done, I'll kind of point out some areas are a little bit patchy. And honestly, I wouldn't probably mind it quite so much if it wasn't going to be scanned and put online. I don't know how, I've never done that before, and I don't quite know how that's going to look. So, I'll finish this up and then we'll see if I need another round of paint. Okay, so I'm gonna take some water and just kind of glaze over and see if I can smooth out any areas of patchiness. See if I can give one smooth layer to this. So this is the final background color. It looks a little different on screen than it does down here, but it looks a little more colored up there. That actually looks a lot better, a lot smoother. I don't know if you guys can tell, but the paper behind this is actually warping a bit. That happens when you get paper wet. Some really heavy duty, like nice watercolor papers won't warp as much when you get them wet. But this one, I mean, it's decent quality, but it's still warping. So I think I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to probably press it and then see if I can get some of the warps out, because like, if you can see, it's all kinds of bent. I'll let this sit, and then I will be back to flatten it and then continue my painting. Okay, so this has dried a little bit. It's still kind of tacky, but I'm an impatient person, and it seems like it's not really coming off on my fingers. So what I'm gonna do to press this is I'm going to grab a thick, heavy book of some sort, Okay, this isn't a thick, heavy book, but it's a drawing people book that I don't really use often. It's got big pages. So what I'm going to do to press this out flat, and I also don't mind getting this a little wet. So I'm going to paint the back of this with water. Oops, it looks like it's still got some paint in there too. I'm gonna paint the back of this liberally with water. Now that I have the back covered in water, I'm going to set this down on the table, or on the, I guess it's my desk, and I'm going to lay the book on top of it. Okay, so it's been a couple hours that I've let this dry, so I am going to lift up my book and I'm going to check and see just how this paper's doing. So as you can see, it's smoothed out a lot. It's not perfectly flat and it's not perfectly dry either, but I do know that as I paint on this some more, it's going to again warp. So this for me is flat enough to continue working on. It's not quite as like bubbly as it was before. So I'm going to start painting my inside of my logo. And to do this, I think what I'm going to do for this logo is I'm going to paint a little swatch right here of green paint, and I'm going to make it look like there's a paintbrush over here that's like painting on here, and then as like it's closer to the paintbrush, it's going to look like normal paint, but then back here I'm going to make it look like there's like flowers and stuff growing, kind of like flowers are growing from the paint, so it's like underbrush, like nature, you know, all that stuff. So part of me really just wants to dive in here and start painting without sketching anything, but I'm kind of scared that if I do that I'm gonna mess it up. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to just sketch roughly the proportions. I'm trying to grab a pencil. Sketch the proportions and then kind of adjust stuff as I go. So yeah, let's get started with that. So I think the hardest part about this is going to be getting the paintbrush proportions correct. So I'm going to start with that. I want the paintbrush at an angle, so probably something like that. Now I know I have to be careful because I need to leave room on this side for the plants, and I need to leave room on this side so I'm not butting up against the edge of this. So I think that's about as long as my paintbrush can be. This will probably be bristles. And then a collar. How big are these things? Ooh. So I think this is kind of what I want it to look like. The bristles aren't quite as long as that collar is. Okay. So I think that looks pretty good. So now I need to draw my line of the paint. I think it's gonna be about there. Like that. And then I'm not sure quite how detailed to make these flowers look. I kind of want this to be a little cartoony. I feel like that looks okay. Not overly complicated. My only concern is that you won't be able to tell what it is. But I think we'll go with that. So now that I have it sketched, I need to run and go grab my kneaded eraser. So I'm back. I've got my kneaded eraser. I've heard different opinions on using kneaded erasers with watercolor art and watercolor paper. Some people really like them because they can lightly pick up pigment from your pencils without completely erasing it. I know some YouTubers on YouTube will do that. But then I've also heard other people say that like they can tear up your watercolor paper. So I like using them, but I'm gonna go through and lightly pick up any extra graphite just so that way when I paint on top of it, it doesn't pick up the graphite. I think that's good. Now we're gonna go back in. Where are those brushes? So these are my brushes. These are like my 3 go-tos. I like them just because they're different sizes and they fit what I'm gonna paint most of the time. So I think I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna mix this green color. I want it to be kind of saturated. So I'll use some of this green here. And like you can see, it completely dried out while the paper was drying. I had left the palette out, but I had covered the paints. So the paints are still wet, but this is dry. And as you can see, like it's picking up, the pigment is redissolving into the water. And I can completely use that like I would before it had dried. So I have this green. I need it to be a little bit darker so it doesn't like blend in with the background. So I'm probably going to add some brown to this. Just as a tip, if you're ever painting anything that you want to be kind of realistic, and you want to make it darker, you want to make sure you are adding brown to it instead of black, because black isn't normally a color, like pure black isn't often found in nature. So if you mix black with your colors, it'll turn out like this weird muddy color, and it won't look natural in your paintings. So even though this isn't really a natural painting, I still would prefer to mix brown with it because it darkens the color without in a natural way, so it still looks kind of normal. So now I'm going to go through, I'm going to water this down a little bit just so that way it goes on more smoothly. And now I'm going to paint this stroke. And now for the plants coming out of it. So I do want them to be lighter. I think I'm going to mix a tiny little bit. I'll have a tiny little bit of white.
Hello, Emma from the future here. It has come to my attention that I actually did not film any of the parts of me painting the flowers or the leaves of this painting, which is a real shame because that was actually my favorite part of the entire painting process. So in a second here, it's gonna cut to where you just see the flowers and the leaves already painted, and I'm really sorry about that, but I have no idea what happened to the footage, so...
Okay, so I let this sit and dry for a little while. I think it's going to be good for lining. So I'm going to use Pigma Micron pens. I really like these a lot for doing line art. They're really handy and they come in a bunch of different sizes. I think for this, just because it is so small and because I don't want it standing out a ton, you can hear me rustling in my bag. Because I don't want it standing out a ton, I'm going to probably use sizes that are under 5. So sizes under 5. So let's see here. That's 5. It's an 8. Don't want those. Looks like I have 2 5s, so those can go away. I'll be using these. So a size 3, a size 2, a size 1, and a size 0.5. Yeah. So I'm just gonna go through and I'm going to do the outlines of most of this. I don't know if I'm gonna do anything with the vines or the actual paint swatch, but let's see how this goes. So I think that is good.
It was at this point that she realized that, unfortunately, she had not filmed the ending of her video. Hello, future Emma here again, and yeah, I don't know what happened here. I don't know how I managed to turn off my camera halfway through me talking. I don't know if my phone just kind of timed out or what the heck happened, but you know, we're just gonna roll with it. So as you can see, here is my final product. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and at this point I've already scanned it into the computer and everything turned out fine. It ended up super vibrant and really pretty, and I think it encaptures what I was looking for pretty well. I think it suits my YouTube name, and I think it'll be a pretty good logo going forward. So I would like to thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and I hope you tune in for future videos from Underbrush Studios. So long!